So welcome everyone to another episode of Real Estate Mogul MD. My name is Bob and I'm a retired executive. I have the privilege of speaking with medical professionals, high income earners and investors. And we're here today to share the real world journeys along with the to-dos and more importantly, the not to-dos. I have the pleasure today to introduce a gentleman who is a lifelong learner, has dedicated his life to education, is affiliated with Texas A&M as we speak now, and that is Mr. Shane Creel. Welcome, Shane. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Bob. Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity.
You're very, very welcome. It's a pleasure. I just really enjoy getting to meet interesting people and have a conversation with them. It never disappoints. But usually I start at the beginning. When did you decide you were going to go to college? Was that even an option when you were growing up? And, why did you select the discipline you selected initially?
Well, actually, I really hadn't considered going to college. I was a ninth grade dropout, got a GED, and I think one of the best decisions I made in my early life was to join the United States Navy. And
as did I. Yeah.
And through that experience and the money that the Navy invested in my education on becoming a shipboard engineer and stuff, that really laid the foundation for me to want to be or want to get additional education. And then just by happenstance, I was walking through the hallway one day and somebody dropped a piece of paper and I picked it up and I said, "What's this tuition assistance thing?" Right? And they said, "Oh, that's the Navy's tuition assistance program for people to take college credits." And I got involved in it and I got the education bug and I just couldn't get rid of it. And I still can't get rid of it.
What year did you join?
I enlisted in 1986. I was promoted rather quickly. I was promoted to chief in 7.5 years.
Wow, you made chief petty officer, was E7, right?
That's correct, yes. I was a young guy wearing khakis and telling other people what to do. And I think I really let my Navy career dictate my education. And I don't know if a lot of people have that same concept. But one thing about being a chief in the Navy is you are everything to young sailors. You're their mom, their dad, their counselor, everything. So when I made that, when I was promoted in that rank, I chose counseling psychology as my master's degree, and just so I would be able to communicate effectively with the sailors on my ship and other commands. And then a little bit, I guess 5 years after that, I was selected for an officer program in the Navy. And again, Navy dictating education. I figured I needed to learn a little bit about business, and so I went for my PhD in organizational leadership.
Very good. Very good.
And it's all played hand in hand into everything that I've done. And I really am thankful for the opportunity that the Navy gave me. And I'm a proponent of military service, and I would encourage others to do that.
I agree with you. It is. I was a bit of a lost guy. I grew up with a highly educated family. The father was a doctor. The mother was a teacher, but they were old school. They didn't tell me when to do school or go to do your homework. Didn't ask. Their expectations were you would do it. And I never forget. I was about 16. And it was summertime. I must have been ready to go into my junior year. And I explained to my dad, I said, I'm not going to go to school anymore. I'm going to drop out. Right. And, highly educated, you can imagine what you think the response would be. But it was the opposite, and it was so clever. And he said, "Oh, no worries. This is in Los Angeles. It's about 105 degrees during the summer." He says, "This is back in like probably 81 or something like that." He goes, "Listen, I got something for you. I know this guy that owns a drywall company, and I'm going to get you in like 81. I'm going to get you $25 an hour." I'm like, "Now that's what I'm talking about. Now we're talking. You understand me, right?" And he says, "Just be up at like 5:30 in the morning. The guys will pick you up." And then, he must have spoke to the owner who spoke to the guys, and they worked me like a rented mule. And I'm talking about, it was within 6 weeks. I'm like, "Hey, you know what? I think I'm going to go back to school, right? When summer's done."
Right. And I had a similar experience, when I quit, I was working through the summers. I was making money. I was making a significant amount of money for my age. And so I formulated in my head that I was making more money than the school teachers were. So what could they teach me that I wasn't already doing?
Yeah.
And then later in life, I figured out that I was working from daylight to dusk. And I was making money, but I was outside physical labor, and they were indoors from
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't think that out too well.
Yeah, me either. I did. And then I went into the Navy also. I was on nuclear subs. So a lot of parallels to our experiences early on in life. So, do you think, so if you could go back now, let's just go back 30 years and tell this version that we're sharing of each other, and you could tell yourself what you know now, what is it that you would, what would be something you would tell yourself, from, a 19-year-old Shane?
I think I would tell myself what I have practiced is never pass up an opportunity. And the opportunity could be anything, whatever it may be. And I have tried to not pass any up and grab everything and just run with it. Even if I didn't fully understand what I was supposed to do. And I learned along the way. And I think everyone has that capability. It's just there's a fear factor associated with it as to whether or not, I will be successful, or if I'll fail, or whatever the case may be. But if you grab it and run with it and learn along the way, you will benefit yourself. You'll benefit the person or organization that offered you the opportunity.
Right.
And the other thing, Bob, is never disregard a suggestion or recommendation from someone that's maybe younger or less educated than you are, because they may have the exact solution for whatever the situation is. I always take everybody as competent and continue moving forward and do what you can to make life better for others.
They were talking, I was listening recently to NASA, and they were speaking about the philosophical difference between themselves and SpaceX, the approach, the way they go at it. So NASA, being risk adverse as we would hope and expect them to be, they never wanted to even see their rockets explode once, right? So they were always, grinding through everything all the time. SpaceX, and it's more costly, they don't fear the mistakes. They send stuff up all the time and it blows up, and then they, reverse engineer and figure out what happened and kind of thrive in a world where they challenge themselves to make mistakes. And it was just interesting hearing NASA talk about the differences. And of course, it all had to do around funding and money and the cost of sending people to space and all of that. But it's an interesting philosophical difference, and it's significant, right? When you have the freedom, if you will, to make mistakes, because so many people don't make a lot of decisions for fear that they are going to make a mistake and then they're going to be called dumb or incompetent or whatever, as opposed to a part of the learning process. It was interesting. So along the way, who is someone that the listeners may not know, but they should know along your journey? Somebody that was important to you, or you that really resonated with you?
At one of my commands in the Navy, I had a diving medical officer on my staff, and I was the executive officer at the time, and his advice to me, I was getting ready to graduate with my PhD, but he said, if you ever get a chance, you need to get a master's in public health for your marketability and everything based on your experiences that you had in the military, the humanitarian efforts that we do and stuff. And from the time I retired, Bob, I was looking for a master's in public health program that would be conducive to my lifestyle and fit into my schedule. And I found one. In 2021, we were in the throes of COVID, and but I jumped in January 2021, and hopefully, if all goes well, I'll graduate in May.
Congratulations.
With my second master's in public health. And here on campus, I was the manager of mismanagement when it came to trying to control and manage COVID on our campus. And, we had throughout our nation, a lot of information that did not jive.
Yeah.
And but we tried to create a safe working environment and a learning environment for our students here. I was responsible for all the COVID testing that we did on campus, and working with our medical staff, doing all that stuff. And we were able to bring our students back. We had to do some screening testing and stuff like that, but we were able to reopen and manage the spread of the virus on campus. And I owe that back to that medical doctor that worked with me many years ago.
What do you think of the difference between in the experience between virtual versus in-class learning?
Well, I am an online kind of guy. I have been teaching online since 2012. I teach in Boston, and I also teach in Orlando. And online learning is much more difficult and tedious than I think face-to-face classes, because it's so much easier for students to blow off doing their assignments in an online arena than it would be face-to-face. It requires a lot of time management skills. It requires determination and dedication from an online learner. And, when we transitioned to the remote world at every campus in the United States, it was very difficult for some of the faculty to transition to an online teaching environment, because they had done what worked for them for years, whether it was right or wrong. And there's been comparisons of true online learning, and what we did in 2020 was emergency remote education.
Right.
It was not an online learning environment. It was getting the information out and putting a check mark in the box.
Right. Yeah, I had an interesting conversation. I was in Flagstaff last week, and I was talking. It was myself, who's a former COO, and an existing COO of a global company, and another set of parents. And I was saying that, it's interesting to see the drive back to the office that organizations are starting to expect and demand. And then the parents, and my youngest is 30, so I had 3 children. The parents with the young ones go, they have a different viewpoint, and they're resisting it because, right or wrong, they're trying to figure out a work-life balance. And I said, it's interesting we have this discussion because I lament the fact that my son, who's 30, has been working in a virtual world for the last 3 years, and he's losing the opportunity to develop a particular skill set that's required in corporate America, which is how to manage up, how to manage down, how to understand the dynamics that's happening in the office. It's just the reality of what has to be managed as a young person, and it's a skill set. It's an important skill set in my estimation. That people need to hone. And, their viewpoint was they're just not going to do it. I said, well, they are going to do it. And, this is the next generation. And I have belief in this generation. I said, you can say what you want, but all those people that were standing in Woodstock hallucinating with long hair that you thought were a lost cause in the 80s were driving Wall Street, the antithesis of everything they believed in 1969. And so whatever they're espousing today will be different tomorrow, especially when they start getting children and they need to, make a living and survive and all of that kind of stuff. The realities of life kick in, right? And it starts to shape our viewpoint on certain things. And so I'm not as discouraged, and I imagine you're not either, working with young people. And I think that they're going to be terrific. And I think they're going to be the next generation. They're going to do a good job. I also think they're a little soft sometimes. Sure. And my parents probably thought I was soft, in the 70s and the 80s. Well, you don't know what it was like in the 50s, or whatever. Right. But I think the generation is, they're thinking outside the box and trying to figure stuff out. Sometimes the pendulum swings too far one way or the other, but I think there'll be equilibrium at some point, and I just do.
I do too. And I have a similar situation with my son, but backing up before I get to that part is, everything that we've experienced over the years is based on technological advances and how that drives our work environment and stuff like that. My son, he's a VR, virtual reality type person. And
right.
He has self-taught himself how to code, how to create, and he is creating VR worlds.
Wow.
But the part I don't understand is, or I cannot bring myself to understand, is everything goes on in this headset on a computer board. There's no real world action, reactions and stuff. And I'm like, you need to get out in the world and you need to associate with other people. Well, I'm associating with people. I said, well, I think, and I told him, I said, if it makes you happy, it makes me happy. But you have to think about what's going to happen in the future. And of course I live in the present. And I'm like, yeah, that's now because we're here, but eventually your thought process will change.
Yeah. I think that is another pet peeve of mine, as I watch my children grow up, initially without phones and then, integrate into their lives and their teenage years at the beginning of phones. And I just really think it stunts their development socially. I always tell this story. I saw it a couple of years ago. It was a video in a frat house Music is blaring at a college. There's someone with a screening around the room. And there has to be 60 people in this house. Every one of them has their back to the wall. Not one person is talking to another. They're on their phone texting someone that's not present.
Right.
But they have 60 people that they came to this party because they wanted to be with. It is just bizarre to me. So enough of an old man's rants. I think it's a good generation. They're going to do okay. They'll figure it out. What was, because I'm segueing all over the place, what is the biggest challenge you've ever faced, and what did you learn from it?
I guess transitioning from active duty military life where orders are orders, and you do as you're told you do, and then moving into a institution of higher education where there's shared governance, and having to change 22 years worth of this is the way we do things to input. Well, now let's have a committee meeting about it and see what we can figure out on the best thing to do. But I received some really good advice from a counselor, advisor, when I first got into higher education is, you have to get people to want you to help them. And she said the easiest way that I would be able to do that was to convince whoever I was working with that if you allow me to do this, it will take something off of your plate. And I will be responsible for it. And then you will no longer be responsible for it. And
what's in it for me?
Exactly. But not sell it in that fashion. Just say, hey, I'm here to help you. And this is what I think, what do you think? And because there has to be consensus in thought. And, after a while, I knew I had achieved my success when I'm walking down the sidewalk on campus and faculty come out of their building and say, hey, Shane, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And I'm going, well, let's mull it over a bit and see, but I'm never one to say no. I always try to find yes, with some modifications if need be, but I want everybody to leave happy.
Absolutely. I believe coming from the corporate world, I grew up again, it was kind of corporate America when I first started. It was top down, it is a bit like the military, what we're going to do it this way. And I'm not asking for your input, and you don't need to know the factors and the variables that were taken into consideration for us to make a decision. I just need you to execute. Right. I create the strategy. You execute my strategy. So,
right.
That was it. And then you start to transition and become more aware of the impact of culture as you get older and as things change. One thing I find fascinating about academia, in terms of their consensus building, is sometimes analysis paralysis. And what I mean by that specifically is when I think it's time to hire a professor of a particular department, I've seen positions open for a couple of years while these committees are dinking around. Of course, that would never survive in corporate America.
No.
We got to fill the position. But I find it interesting that it takes so long sometimes to get that consensus and pull the trigger. But it's working, I guess.
I agree. And that's one thing I still have difficulty with. Sometimes, an opportunity is there, but we are unable to execute because everybody's got to talk about it. And sometimes, I feel there needs to be a unilateral decision made to say this is what we're going to do because it will benefit X, Y, Z. But the opportunity passes us by because we're unable to pull the trigger.
Yeah, somebody's got to be in charge sometimes and make a decision. So we've talked about academia and your growth and learning experience. What have you done over the years for financial literacy? How do you go about investing, and what has been your approach for tackling that area of your life?
Again, it all started in the Navy and traveling all over the world and having to do money conversion. You go to all these places, everybody accepts the dollar, but if you have local currency, sometimes you get a better deal.
Absolutely.
Just doing all of those conversions, I figured that I need to learn some financial skills and stuff. And I think everybody that leaves the Navy after a 4-year tour, has been on a couple of deployments, they ought to have a degree in finance, because they have to try to do all this stuff in their head and stuff. But I started speculating with currency back then and saying, I'm going to buy some X amount of this currency and we're going to go away, and then I'm going to come back and visit, and then I'm going to cash out and then get that, but
right.
It didn't work out too well. But hey,
it was flip a coin.
Right. But I have worked with my school in Boston is a business college, and I teach compliance and ethics with a financial slant. And I was able to develop fraud accounting classes and stuff. And I have been fortunate enough to become a certified fraud examiner and be able to look at that fraud examination and techniques. And for me personally, I do invest. I invest in the market, and I jumped on the crypto bandwagon.
How'd you do?
I'm still hanging on. I can't say that I'm ready to pack up and go home yet. But,
yeah.
But I know your podcast is real estate, and I think that's a really good opportunity. And having grown up in Mississippi, the real estate market in Mississippi is, down on the cheaps. And if I've had an opportunity my brother still lives in Mississippi. He's an attorney, and we worked together on a couple properties and getting those, and you buy cheap, sell high. Same thing with the market concept. But as always, there's gloom and doom, and there is a psychology to investing. And, we go through the process, and I try to link it to the 5 stages of grief, where we're on a high and we're all excited because our stock's moving up. And then a lot of times we get trapped into, that's when we buy more, and we shouldn't be doing that.
No, I learned long ago, it is, instead of being upset that it dropped precipitously, this is maybe a once in a generation opportunity to buy stocks at these prices. And of course that was true. And so, really, it's counterintuitive to people's nature when I'm on a losing streak and it's losing. What I can't buy into this thing going down, but you do, and you do well over time. You can't think about it from a short-term perspective for sure.
Well, if you're able to do that, that's when you have your maximum financial opportunity.
That's correct.
If you're not scared, and I go back to scared money don't make money.
That's right. Well, Shane, it's been terrific talking with you. I've enjoyed hearing your story. Some of it sounds eerily a similar parallel in our early days. Getting ourselves in trouble as young teenage boys and figuring it out, and the Navy helping us, or the military, and through education as well. I went on and became, got a couple of degrees, and that's been very helpful. I think probably the biggest thing I learned in the military was a little bit of humility. I guess I thought I was pretty hot stuff when for no known reason other than in my little head that there was this ego. And when you get stuck in a submarine with people, 100 of them for 3 months at a time before you get out, you better learn to get along, right? And figure out, find even the person you can't stand. You got to find something about them that you like, right? Because you gotta live with them. So that was a big lesson for me, but I enjoyed hearing all of your lessons and the journeys and recommendations that you've made for others, and the good work that you're doing for them. Thank you for your service. And we really appreciated having you here today.
Thank you so much, Bob. And again, appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.